My nanny cam recorded my nanny saying, "I wish you were never born," to my baby. The words hit me like a physical blow as I watched the nanny cam footage on my laptop screen. "I wish you were never born, you little brat. Just shut up already." My hands started shaking as I watched Rebecca, sweet, gentle Rebecca who I trusted with my most precious thing in the world, lean over Emma's crib with a twisted expression of pure hatred. My 8-month-old daughter was crying, her little face red and scrunched up, completely helpless and innocent. And this woman, this monster I'd been paying $2,800 a month to love and care for my baby, was spitting venom at her. I had to pause the video. My heart was hammering so hard I thought I might throw up right there in my office cubicle. This was from yesterday, Tuesday, November 14th, at 2:47 p.m. according to the timestamp. I'd been in my quarterly review with Mr. Patterson, probably talking about growth metrics and productivity goals while my daughter was being emotionally tortured by the woman I'd handpicked to be her caregiver. Rebecca Martinez. 26 years old, spotless references, early childhood development degree from Portland State. She'd seemed like an angel when I interviewed her 3 months ago, right before I had to go back to work. She spoke so softly, smiled so warmly when she held Emma during that trial afternoon. She even teared up when Emma grabbed her finger with those tiny hands. I thought I'd won the nanny lottery. What an absolute fool I'd been. I forced myself to keep watching. Rebecca was still standing over the crib, and Emma's cries were getting more desperate. "Your mommy doesn't even want to be here with you," Rebecca hissed, her voice dripping with cruelty. "She dumped you with me so she could run off and play office worker. You're nothing but a burden." The coffee I'd drunk an hour ago came rushing back up my throat. I clamped my hand over my mouth and ran to the bathroom, barely making it to a stall before I lost it completely. Burden. She called my sweet Emma a burden. My beautiful, perfect daughter who smiled every morning when I kissed her goodbye, who giggled when I made silly faces during our evening routine, who was the entire reason I dragged myself out of bed every day to come to this soul-crushing job in the first place. I stayed in that bathroom stall for 20 minutes, crying and shaking and trying to figure out what to do. Every fiber in my being screamed to drive home immediately, grab Emma, and throw Rebecca out on the street. But something stopped me. Something cold and calculating that I didn't recognize in myself. I needed more evidence. One video might not be enough. What if Rebecca claimed it was a one-time thing, a moment of weakness? What if she tried to spin it as a joke or misunderstanding? No, I needed to document a pattern. I needed proof that would be absolutely undeniable. More than that, I needed to make sure she never did this to another child again. Walking back to my desk on unsteady legs, I opened a new browser window and started researching. How many other families had Rebecca worked for? Were there other parents who deserved to know what kind of person they trusted with their children? My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca herself. "Emma had a great day. She's napping now. See you at 6. Smiling face with smiling eyes." I stared at that cheerful emoji until my vision blurred with rage. Two could play the fake game. I typed back, "Wonderful. Thank you so much for everything you do. Red heart." The evidence gathering started now. The rest of the workday crawled by like torture. Every few minutes I'd refresh the nanny cam app on my phone, watching Rebecca move through our house like she owned it. She was making herself lunch in my kitchen, using my good plates, even helping herself to the expensive Greek yogurt I'd been saving. The casual entitlement made my skin crawl. At 3:30 p.m., Emma woke up from her nap crying again. I held my breath as Rebecca walked into the nursery, plastering on a fake sing-song voice. "Oh, what's wrong now, princess?" But the moment Emma's cries intensified, her mask slipped again. "Jesus Christ, what is wrong with you? Normal babies don't cry this much." I screenshot the timestamp and started a document on my laptop, evidence log, Rebecca Martinez. Tuesday, November 14th, 2:47 p.m., told Emma, "I wish you were never born," called her a brat. Tuesday, November 14th, 3:31 p.m., what is wrong with you? Normal babies don't cry this much. My fingers were trembling as I typed. Normal babies. Like there was something defective about my daughter for having needs. I called Emma's pediatrician, Dr. Kim, during my lunch break the next day. "I just want to make sure Emma's crying patterns are typical," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Her nanny mentioned she cries more than normal babies." "Emma's absolutely perfect," Dr. Kim assured me. "Some babies are just more expressive than others. At 8 months, crying is literally her only way to communicate hunger, discomfort, or the need for attention. Whoever told you that clearly doesn't understand child development. Whoever told me that had a degree in early childhood development from Portland State." The contradiction made my blood boil. That evening, I stayed late at the office and accessed more of the archived footage. The nanny cam system stored everything for 30 days, and I started methodically going through the past 2 weeks. What I found made me physically sick. November 8th, stop looking at me like that. I'm not your mommy, and I don't have to pretend to like you when she's not here. November 10th, Rebecca had left Emma crying in her crib for 47 minutes while she watched Netflix in the living room, volume turned up loud. November 12th, your daddy doesn't even live here anymore because you ruined everything. Babies ruin everything. That last one hit me like a punch to the gut. David and I were separated, yes, but it had nothing to do with Emma. We'd been growing apart since before I got pregnant. Rebecca had no right to project that onto my innocent daughter, no right to make Emma feel responsible for adult problems she couldn't possibly understand. I printed out screenshots and timestamps for everything. By Thursday night, I had 14 separate incidents documented over just 2 weeks. 14 times this woman had emotionally abused my child while I paid her $18 an hour to do it. But I wanted more than just firing her. I wanted consequences that would stick. I started Googling Rebecca's name, cross-referencing it with the other families on her reference list. Jennifer Walsh, who'd employed Rebecca for 6 months in 2022, had left a glowing recommendation. I found Jennifer's Facebook profile and noticed something odd. She posted about nanny troubles and trusting your instincts around the same time Rebecca would have left her employment. Rebecca's previous employer before Jennifer was listed as the Morrison family in Southeast Portland. It was time to make some phone calls. If Rebecca had done this before, if there were other parents who'd suspected something but couldn't prove it, maybe together we could build a case that would follow her for the rest of her career. The hunter was becoming the hunted, and Rebecca had no idea what was coming. I called Jennifer Walsh that Friday evening, my heart pounding as I dialed her number. I'd crafted a careful script about checking references for our current nanny Rebecca Martinez, but the moment Jennifer heard Rebecca's name, her tone shifted completely. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Are you calling because something happened?" The relief in her voice told me everything I needed to know. "What did you experience with her?" I asked, abandoning my prepared speech. "I could never prove anything," Jennifer said, and I could hear her moving to somewhere more private. "But my daughter Chloe started having these terrible night terrors while Rebecca was watching her. She was only 2, but she'd wake up screaming and wouldn't let me leave her alone during the day anymore. Rebecca always had perfect explanations. Chloe was going through a difficult phase, separation anxiety, normal toddler behavior." I gripped my phone tighter. "But you suspected something?" "The last week before I let her go, I came home early from a dentist appointment. Chloe was in her room crying, and Rebecca was in my kitchen on her phone, completely ignoring her. When I asked how long Chloe had been upset, Rebecca said just a few minutes, but my neighbor texted me later that she'd heard crying for over an hour." My stomach twisted. "Did you ever confront her directly?" "I tried, but Rebecca was so good at making me feel like I was being an overprotective mom. She had all this education, all these credentials. She'd quote child development theories at me and make me second-guess my own instincts." Jennifer's voice cracked slightly. "I still feel guilty about not trusting myself sooner." After Jennifer, I called the Morrison family. Lisa Morrison answered, and when I mentioned Rebecca's name, the silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "She worked for you too?" Lisa finally asked. "How's your baby doing?" "I'm still gathering information," I said carefully. "What was your experience?" "My son Tyler was 9 months old when I hired Rebecca. Happy baby, good sleeper, hardly ever fussy. Within 2 weeks of her starting, he became this completely different child. Clingy, crying constantly, wouldn't nap unless I was home. Our pediatrician couldn't find anything wrong, suggested it might be a developmental leap, but it didn't feel right," I finished. "Exactly. And Rebecca kept telling me I was being too anxious, that Tyler could sense my stress. She made me feel like I was the problem." Lisa paused. "I ended up quitting my job to stay home with him because I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Within a week of Rebecca leaving, Tyler was back to his normal, happy self. 3 families. 3 children who'd shown behavioral changes under Rebecca's care. 3 mothers who'd been gaslit into doubting their own instincts." I hung up feeling simultaneously vindicated and furious. How many other families were out there? How many other babies had been subjected to Rebecca's psychological abuse while their parents worked, trusting that their children were safe and loved? That weekend, I installed 2 additional cameras, one hidden in the kitchen and another in the hallway. If Rebecca was going to reveal her true nature, I wanted every angle covered. I also started documenting Emma's behavior patterns more carefully. Was my daughter showing signs of distress that I'd been attributing to normal baby fussiness? Saturday morning, I watched Rebecca arrive at 8 a.m. sharp, her usual bright smile in place. "Good morning, Emma baby," she cooed while I was still in the room. "Did you miss me?" But through the nanny cam later, I watched her drop the act the moment my car pulled out of the driveway. By 8:47 a.m., she was already snapping at Emma for spitting up her morning bottle. "Disgusting," she muttered, roughly wiping Emma's face. "Learn some manners." Evidence log entry number 18. I was building an airtight case, one horrible timestamp at a time. But more than that, I was planning Rebecca's complete professional destruction. She thought she could manipulate and abuse vulnerable children while hiding behind fake credentials and sugar-sweet references. She had no idea who she was dealing with. By Monday morning, I had a plan that went far beyond just firing Rebecca. I'd spent the entire weekend researching childcare licensing boards, background check companies, and online review platforms. If Rebecca wanted to play games with innocent children, she was about to learn that some games have consequences that last forever. I started with the Oregon Department of Early Learning and Care. Even though Rebecca worked as a private nanny rather than at a licensed facility, they still maintained records of complaints against childcare providers. I filled out a formal complaint form, attaching screenshots from my evidence log and contact information for Jennifer Walsh and Lisa Morrison, who'd both agreed to provide statements. Next, I created accounts on care.com, sittercity.com, and Nannies for Hire, all the platforms where Rebecca advertised her services. I couldn't post reviews yet without raising suspicion, but I documented her profiles, saved screenshots of her glowing fake testimonials, and started drafting the reviews that would destroy her online presence. The really brilliant part of my plan came to me Sunday night while I was feeding Emma her bedtime bottle. My daughter looked up at me with those trusting brown eyes, and I realized I wasn't just protecting her anymore, I was protecting every future child Rebecca might target. I was going to catch her in the act. On camera. With witnesses. Tuesday afternoon, I texted Rebecca that my sister would be stopping by around 3 p.m. to drop off some baby clothes. What Rebecca didn't know was that my sister Melissa was actually going to park around the corner and wait for my signal. At 2:45 p.m., I watched through the nanny cam as Rebecca settled into her usual routine. Emma had just woken up from her nap and was babbling happily in her crib until Rebecca walked in with that fake syrupy voice. "Oh, you're awake already? Wonderful. Just wonderful." The sarcasm was thick even through my phone speaker. Emma started fussing, probably picking up on Rebecca's negative energy. Within minutes, my daughter was crying, and Rebecca's mask came off completely. "I am so sick of this," she snapped, leaning over the crib. "Do you know what I could be doing instead of listening to you scream all day? I have a master's degree. I speak 3 languages. But here I am, stuck with the most annoying baby in Portland because your mommy pays me just enough to cover my student loans." My hands were shaking as I texted Melissa, "Come now. Use your spare key. Go straight to nursery." Rebecca was still ranting at my 8-month-old daughter. "You want to know a secret? Your precious mommy only had you to try to save her pathetic marriage. Didn't work though, did it? Daddy still left. And now she's stuck with you and pretending like she doesn't regret it every single day." That's when I heard my sister's key in the front door. The change in Rebecca was instantaneous. She heard the sound and immediately switched into caring nanny mode, scooping Emma up with fake gentleness. There, sweet girl. Aunt Melissa's here to visit." But Melissa had been coached. She walked slowly, letting Rebecca get comfortable with her performance before entering the nursery. Oh, she was crying? Melissa asked innocently. Is everything okay? Just a little fussy after her nap, Rebecca lied smoothly. But we're having a good day, aren't we, Emma? She bounced my daughter gently, putting on her caring caregiver act. What Rebecca didn't know was that Melissa was recording everything on her phone, positioned to capture both Rebecca's fake sweetness and my laptop screen in the background, which was playing back the footage from 3 minutes earlier. Sarah mentioned Emma's been crying more lately, Melissa continued, following my script perfectly. She's worried something might be wrong. I watched Rebecca's jaw tighten slightly. Oh, that's completely normal. Some babies are just more demanding than others. Sarah tends to be a bit anxious about everything. There it was. On camera. Rebecca dismissing my concerns while literally holding the child she'd just finished emotionally abusing. The contrast between her recorded cruelty and her performed care was going to be devastating when I revealed it. After Melissa left, I had everything I needed. But I wasn't ready to pull the trigger yet. Because tomorrow was Wednesday, the day Rebecca's friend Carla was coming over for their weekly coffee date. And I had very special plans for that little social gathering. Wednesday morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 8 months. My supervisor wasn't thrilled, but I fed her some story about a stomach bug and promised to check emails from home. What I was really doing was setting up the most elaborate trap of Rebecca's miserable career. Carla Montenegro arrived at 10:30 a.m. sharp, just like every Wednesday. I'd done my research on her too, Rebecca's former roommate from Portland State, currently working as a nanny for the Patterson family in Lake Oswego. The same Patterson family where Mrs. Patterson had posted on a local mom Facebook group just last week about her 3-year-old son suddenly becoming aggressive and withdrawn. Interesting coincidence. I parked 2 blocks away and watched through the nanny cam app as Rebecca let Carla in. They settled into my kitchen with my expensive coffee and my homemade banana bread, while Emma played in her bouncy seat nearby. For the first 20 minutes, everything looked perfectly normal, 2 young women chatting about their jobs, weekend plans, some guy named Derek that Carla was dating. Then Emma started getting fussy. She'd been playing contentedly, but 8-month-olds have needs, and she was probably getting hungry. Her whimpers started soft, then built to proper crying when Rebecca ignored her. God, does she ever shut up? Carla asked, not even trying to hide her annoyance. Rebecca laughed, actually laughed, at my daughter's distress. Never. This kid is the worst. I swear Sarah had her just to trap David into staying married, but joke's on her because he still bailed. My hands clenched around my phone. Even with everything I'd already witnessed, hearing her mock my family's situation to her friend felt like a new level of betrayal. Why don't you just quit? Carla asked, raising her voice over Emma's crying. Because I need the money, and finding new families is a pain in the ass. Plus, Sarah's so desperate and guilty about going back to work, she basically lets me do whatever I want. Emma's cries were getting more urgent. She was definitely hungry now, probably needed a diaper change too. Any caring person would have attended to her immediately. Instead, Rebecca got up and closed the kitchen door. There, that's better, she said, settling back down with her coffee. Let her cry it out. Sarah read some parenting book about not rushing to comfort them every time they make noise. That was a complete lie. I'd never said anything about crying it out, especially not for basic needs like food. But what happened next made my blood run cold. You know what I told the Morrison baby when he wouldn't stop crying? Rebecca said, and I could hear the cruel amusement in her voice even through the phone speaker. What? Carla was leaning in, clearly entertained. I told him his parents left him with me because they needed a break from how annoying he was. You should have seen his little face, he totally understood. Babies aren't as stupid as people think. Carla burst out laughing. That's horrible. Did he stop crying? For like an hour. Then I had to get creative. Rebecca's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. Sometimes I tell them their parents might not come back if they're too much trouble. Works like a charm. I had to pull over. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't steer properly. These 2 monsters were sitting in my kitchen, eating my food, laughing about psychologically torturing babies. Emma was still crying in the background, and they were treating it like ambient noise. But the worst part? Carla was taking notes. Oh my god, I have to try that with a Patterson kid, she said. He's been such a nightmare lately. Maybe if I tell him his parents are thinking about sending him away. Just don't overdo it, Rebecca advised. You want them scared, not traumatized enough that they actually tell their parents. I learned that the hard way with my first family. First family. She'd been doing this longer than I'd thought. I sat in my car for 10 more minutes, documenting every word they said. Emma's crying had stopped, probably from exhaustion rather than comfort, and the 2 psychopaths had moved on to critiquing other nannies in their network. Jessica's too soft, Carla was saying. She actually likes kids. It's weird. I know, right? Like, it's a job, not a calling. These people pay us to keep their kids alive, not to actually care about them. By the time Carla left at noon, I had recorded 43 minutes of the most damning conversation possible. Not only did I have evidence of Rebecca's abuse toward Emma, but I had her admitting to a pattern of psychological manipulation across multiple families. Even better, I had Carla confessing to planning similar abuse of the Patterson child. 2 birds, 1 stone. I waited until 12:30 p.m., then texted Rebecca that I was feeling better and would be home early around 2 p.m. What I actually did was drive to Lake Oswego and ring the Patterson family's doorbell. Mrs. Patterson answered looking frazzled, her 3-year-old son clinging to her leg and crying. I'm so sorry to bother you, I said, but I have some information about your nanny that I think you need to see. Mrs. Patterson's face went through a series of emotions as I showed her the recordings on my phone. First confusion, then disbelief, then a growing horror that mirrored what I'd felt in that bathroom stall just days ago. That's Carla's voice, she whispered, pulling her son closer. She's been with us for 4 months. Tyler loved her at first, but lately. She trailed off, staring at my phone screen where I'd paused on a timestamp from this morning's kitchen conversation. Lately he's been different? I prompted gently. Clingy. Anxious. He started asking if Daddy and I were going to send him away because he was bad. We had no idea where he got that from. Mrs. Patterson's voice cracked. Oh God, how long has this been happening? I showed her 3 more recordings, Rebecca coaching Carla on manipulation techniques, Carla laughing about making Tyler cry, and the most damning one where they discussed their problem families like some kind of twisted support group. There are others, I said quietly. I've spoken with 2 previous families who suspected something but couldn't prove it. I think Rebecca and Carla have been doing this for years. Mrs. Patterson was crying now, her son looking up at her with those wide, confused eyes that children get when they sense something's wrong but can't understand what. I trusted her. We did a background check, called her references. The references are probably fake, or from families who never suspected anything. Rebecca's very good at choosing victims, working parents who feel guilty about leaving their children, first-time parents who don't trust their instincts yet. What are you going to do? She asked. That was the question I'd been wrestling with all week. What I wanted to do was march home right now, throw Rebecca out, and pretend this nightmare had never happened. But what I was going to do was so much bigger. I'm going to destroy them both, I said simply. But I need your help. By 1:30 p.m., Mrs. Patterson and I had a plan that would have made corporate strategists proud. She was going to text Carla about coming home early, just like I'd done with Rebecca. We'd coordinate our arrival so that both nannies would be caught off guard simultaneously, eliminating any chance for them to warn each other or fabricate excuses. More importantly, Mrs. Patterson had agreed to file a formal complaint with the state licensing board and provide testimony for my growing case. She also gave me contact information for 3 other families in her neighborhood who'd had mysterious nanny problems over the past year. There's something else, she said as I was preparing to leave. Carla belongs to this private Facebook group for nannies in the Portland area. She's always on her phone during Tyler's nap time, posting about difficult families and problem children. I thought she was just venting, but now it sounds like a training ground for abuse tactics, I finished. The scope of this conspiracy was getting bigger by the hour. Mrs. Patterson nodded grimly. I screenshot some of her posts last month when I was starting to get suspicious. I can send them to you. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with notifications. Mrs. Patterson was forwarding me images of Carla's Facebook posts, and what I saw made my skin crawl. Dozens of nannies sharing techniques for managing overly demanding children and helicopter parents. Comments like told the baby his mom didn't want to come back and sometimes you have to break them down before you can build them up. They turned child abuse into a social network. I pulled into my driveway at exactly 2 p.m., just as Rebecca was probably expecting me. Through the living room window, I could see her scrambling to put away her laptop and grab Emma from wherever she'd been ignoring her. But I wasn't going in empty-handed anymore. I had recordings, witness statements, a network of affected families, and most importantly, I had backup. Mrs. Patterson was confronting Carla at the same moment, and we'd both agreed to document everything. Rebecca opened the front door with her usual fake smile, Emma balanced on her hip. Sarah, you're feeling better. Emma and I were just having such a wonderful. Cut the act, Rebecca, I said, walking past her into my own house. We need to talk. The confusion that flickered across her face was almost satisfying. Almost. I'm sorry? Is everything okay? I turned to face her, my laptop already open to the nanny cam footage. Tell me, Rebecca, what do you think about the phrase, I wish you were never born? The color drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire ready to snap. Rebecca's face had gone from confused to pale to what I could only describe as cornered animal desperate. Emma was still balanced on her hip, my innocent daughter completely unaware that she was being held by someone who'd spent months tormenting her. I don't know what you're talking about, Rebecca said finally, but her voice had lost all its usual confidence. Sarah, you're scaring me. Maybe you should sit down? You said you were sick today. Tuesday, November 14th, 2:47 p.m., I said, reading directly from my evidence log. You told my 8-month-old daughter, and I quote, I wish you were never born, you little brat. Just shut up already. Rebecca's grip on Emma tightened slightly, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of real fear. Not fear of confrontation or legal consequences, but physical fear for my daughter's safety. Rebecca looked trapped, and trapped people did unpredictable things. Can I please have my daughter? I said, extending my arms. Sarah, I think you're having some kind of breakdown. Maybe we should call David. Give me my daughter. Now. My voice came out harder than I'd ever heard it. Rebecca hesitated for just a moment too long before handing Emma over, and I caught a flash of something ugly in her expression. Calculation. Like she was weighing her options. Emma immediately relaxed in my arms, her little body settling against me in a way that broke my heart. Had she been tense this entire time? Had my baby been living in a constant state of stress while I congratulated myself on finding such a wonderful caregiver? I have video evidence of 14 separate incidents over the past 2 weeks, I continued, settling Emma in her bouncy seat where she couldn't be used as leverage again. I have recorded phone conversations with your previous employers, Jennifer Walsh and Lisa Morrison, detailing similar behavioral changes in their children while you were caring for them. Rebecca's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You called my references? That's completely inappropriate. What's inappropriate is telling a baby that her parents don't want her. What's inappropriate is leaving her crying for 47 minutes while you watch Netflix. What's inappropriate is using psychological manipulation tactics on children who can't defend themselves. Those families were lying, you don't understand how difficult. And as of 1 hour ago, I have recordings of you coaching your friend Carla Montenegro on how to emotionally abuse the Patterson family's 3-year-old son. I turned my laptop screen toward her, where the audio file from this morning's kitchen conversation was queued up and ready to play. The fight went out of Rebecca's face like air from a punctured balloon. She sank into my couch, in my house, where I trusted her with my most precious possession, and put her head in her hands. You recorded me in your own house, she said, but it wasn't an accusation. It was the voice of someone who'd just realized they'd been outmaneuvered completely. I recorded someone who was abusing my child in my own house, I corrected. Someone who I was paying $2,800 a month to provide love and care, not psychological torture. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson. Carla confessed to everything. She's packing her bags now. Tyler's been asking for hugs nonstop since she left. I showed Rebecca the message. Your friend didn't hold up quite as well under pressure. She's already admitted to the Patterson family that you've been teaching her manipulation techniques. How many other nannies are in your little Facebook group, Rebecca? How many other children have you been systematically damaging? Rebecca looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes, and for a split second I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I need this job, she whispered. I have student loans, and my car payment, and... You need help, I said flatly. Professional help. What you don't need is access to vulnerable children ever again. Rebecca's confession wasn't the relief I'd expected it to be. Instead, it opened up a whole new level of horror that I wasn't prepared for. How many children, Rebecca? I pressed, my voice steadier than I felt. How many families? She wiped her nose with the back of her hand, leaving a wet streak across her cheek. I never meant for it to get this bad. It started with just venting. You know how stressful this job is. Venting is complaining to friends about long hours or difficult parents. This is systematic psychological abuse of infants and toddlers. I pulled up another video on my laptop, Monday's footage of her telling Emma that crying babies get abandoned. Watch this and tell me it's just venting. But Rebecca wouldn't look at the screen. Instead, she started talking, words pouring out like she couldn't stop them. The Facebook group has maybe 40 members. Carla and I started it 2 years ago after we both got fired from families for stupid reasons. We just wanted somewhere to talk honestly about how hard it is to deal with rich parents who expect you to love their kids as much as they do. 40 members. 40 nannies potentially sharing abuse tactics across Portland. It wasn't supposed to be about hurting kids, she continued. It was about survival strategies. How to manage when you're stuck with a screaming baby for 10 hours and the parents act like you should be grateful for the privilege. Survival strategies, I repeated, my voice dripping with disgust. Like telling my daughter she's unwanted? Emma cries constantly. More than any baby I've ever watched. And you act like she's perfect, like I'm supposed to just smile and take it when she screams for hours. The audacity was breathtaking. She's 8 months old, Rebecca. Crying is literally her only form of communication. If you can't handle that basic reality of child development, you shouldn't be working with children. My phone rang, Mrs. Patterson calling back. I put her on speaker without asking Rebecca's permission. Sarah, you need to hear this, Mrs. Patterson's voice filled the room. After Carla left, Tyler started talking. He's been holding in so much. She told him that if he cried when I left for work, I might decide not to come back. She said some children get returned if they're too difficult. Rebecca flinched like she'd been slapped, but I wasn't done. Tell her about the Facebook group, Rebecca. Tell Mrs. Patterson how many other nannies you've been teaching these techniques to. There's a group? Mrs. Patterson's voice went sharp. How many people are doing this to children? Rebecca was shaking now, her carefully constructed professional facade completely destroyed. It's not organized like that. People just share experiences. Strategies that work when families have unrealistic expectations. What kind of strategies? I demanded. Things like, if a child is being particularly difficult, sometimes you need to establish boundaries. Make them understand that their behavior has consequences. The clinical language she was using made my skin crawl. She was talking about terrorizing babies like it was a legitimate childcare philosophy. Consequences, I said slowly. You mean psychological manipulation of children too young to understand complex emotions or abstract concepts. I never hurt anyone physically. You told my daughter that her father left because of her. She's 8 months old, Rebecca. She doesn't understand divorce, but she absolutely understands tone and emotional energy. You've been poisoning her environment every single day. Mrs. Patterson's voice came through the phone speaker. I'm calling the other families in my neighborhood. And I'm reporting that Facebook group to the police. Wait, Rebecca said suddenly, panic evident in her voice. You can't just destroy people's livelihoods over this. Most of the group members never actually did anything wrong. They just needed somewhere to vent about difficult situations. But I was already 3 steps ahead of her. While she'd been making her pathetic justifications, I'd been texting screenshots of our conversation to Jennifer Walsh and Lisa Morrison. The network of affected families was growing by the hour, and every single one of them deserved to know exactly how extensive this conspiracy was. Your livelihood? I said, looking at Rebecca with complete contempt. What about my daughter's psychological well-being? What about Tyler Patterson's sense of security? What about all the other children who've been subjected to your strategies? Rebecca opened her mouth to respond, but my laptop chimed with a new email notification. Dr. Kim, Emma's pediatrician, responding to the detailed message I'd sent her an hour ago with video attachments. What she'd written made everything so much worse. Dr. Kim's email was short, but it hit me like a physical blow. Sarah, after reviewing the footage you sent, I need you to bring Emma in for an immediate evaluation. The behavioral patterns you've documented suggest possible developmental delays that could be trauma-related. Some of Emma's recent fussiness that we attributed to normal infant development may actually be stress responses. I've seen this before in cases of emotional abuse. We need to assess her attachment patterns and stress indicators right away. I have an opening at 4 p.m. today if you can make it. Dr. Kim. My hand started shaking as I read it aloud. Rebecca went completely white. That's not. Emma's fine, Rebecca stammered. She's a normal baby. Dr. Kim is just overreacting because you're being dramatic about this whole thing. But even as she said it, pieces were clicking into place in my mind. Emma's recent sleep disruptions. The way she'd become more clingy on weekends when I was home. How she sometimes flinched when I raised my voice even slightly, something she'd never done before Rebecca started working for us. You did this, I whispered, looking at my daughter who was sitting quietly in her bouncy seat, too quietly for an 8-month-old. You actually damaged her. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from Jennifer Walsh. Sarah, I showed your recordings to our pediatrician. She wants to examine Chloe for signs of developmental regression. She said emotional abuse in infants can cause lasting changes to brain development. I'm so sorry I didn't document everything better when it was happening to us. Rebecca shot up from the couch, suddenly animated. This is insane. You're all feeding into each other's paranoia. Children go through phases, that's completely normal. You can't just blame every little thing on. Shut up. The words came out of me with such force that Rebecca actually stepped backward. Do not say another word about what's normal for children. You have proven beyond any doubt that you have no idea what normal, healthy child development looks like. I picked up Emma, holding her close to my chest. She immediately relaxed against me, her tiny fist grabbing onto my shirt. How had I not noticed how tense she was when Rebecca held her? How had I missed the signs that my baby was living in a constant state of stress? Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice deadly calm. You're going to pack your things and leave my house in the next 10 minutes. You're never going to contact me, my daughter, or my family again. And tomorrow morning, I'm filing formal complaints with the State Licensing Board, the Better Business Bureau, and every childcare website where you have a profile. Sarah, please, you don't understand how hard it is to find work in this field. If you destroy my reputation. If I destroy your reputation? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You destroyed it yourself when you chose to emotionally abuse helpless children for money. I'm just making sure other parents know what they're dealing with. My laptop chimed with another email, this one from someone named Amanda Fletcher with the subject line about Rebecca Martinez. My stomach dropped as I realized my network of affected families was about to get bigger. There's more, I said, opening the email. Amanda Fletcher says she hired you for 3 months last year. Her son Marcus started having severe separation anxiety during your employment. She's been in therapy with him for 8 months trying to address behavioral changes that started while you were his caregiver. Rebecca's face crumpled, but I felt no sympathy whatsoever. How many children, Rebecca? How many families have been dealing with the aftermath of your abuse while you moved on to your next victim? Before she could answer, my phone rang again. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but when I answered, the woman's voice was urgent. Is this Sarah? My name is Detective Martinez with the Portland Police Bureau. We need to talk. The police detective's voice cut through the chaos in my living room like a blade. Mrs. Chen, I'm calling about a complaint filed this afternoon regarding organized child abuse through social media networks. Your name came up as a primary witness. Rebecca's face went from pale to gray. She sank back onto my couch, her hands trembling visibly. We've been monitoring suspicious activity on several nanny-related Facebook groups for the past 6 months, Detective Martinez continued. Earlier today, we received reports about a group called Portland Childcare Reality Check that appears to be sharing techniques for what they call behavioral management of infants and toddlers. I put the phone on speaker, watching Rebecca's expression shift from panic to something approaching terror. How did you find out about the group? Mrs. Patterson contacted us after confronting her nanny, Carla Montenegro. Ms. Montenegro provided us with login credentials for the Facebook group in exchange for cooperation. What we found there is extensive. Rebecca made a small whimpering sound, like a wounded animal. Mrs. Chen, we need you to come to the station tonight to provide your evidence. We're building a case that could affect dozens of families across the Portland metro area. This isn't just about individual nannies anymore. This appears to be an organized network sharing systematic abuse techniques. My mind reeled. Organized network? The Facebook group has detailed posts going back 18 months. Members sharing what they call psychological conditioning methods for managing difficult children. Screenshots of text conversations where they coordinate stories when parents get suspicious. Even recommendations for which families to target based on parental work schedules and guilt levels. I stared at Rebecca, who had buried her face in her hands. They were targeting vulnerable families on purpose? From what we can see so far, yes. Single mothers, first-time parents, families where both parents work long hours. The group members would share information about which agencies had the most lenient background check policies, how to fabricate references, even which neighborhoods had the most hands-off parents. Emma started fussing in my arms, probably picking up on the tension in the room. But for the first time in months, I noticed she wasn't that inconsolable crying that had become so frequent lately. It was just normal baby fussing, the kind any caring person would respond to with patience. Rebecca Martinez is in my house right now, I said into the phone. She's been Emma's nanny for 3 months. Don't let her leave. We're sending officers to your address within 15 minutes to take a statement. Ms. Martinez needs to come with us for questioning. Rebecca's head snapped up. You can't arrest me. I never touched any of these children. Everything I did was within normal childcare parameters. Ma'am, you're on speaker. Detective Martinez's voice was flat. I'd recommend exercising your right to remain silent at this point. But Rebecca seemed incapable of stopping herself. This is harassment. These parents are just looking for someone to blame because they feel guilty about leaving their kids with strangers. I provided quality childcare services. You told my 8-month-old daughter that her father abandoned her because she was annoying, I interrupted. You left her crying alone for nearly an hour while you watched Netflix. You coached other nannies on how to psychologically manipulate toddlers. None of that is quality childcare. My phone buzzed with multiple text messages coming in rapid succession. Jennifer Walsh, Lisa Morrison, Amanda Fletcher, and now 3 new numbers I didn't recognize. Word was spreading through the network of affected families faster than I could track. One message from an unknown number made my blood run cold. My daughter stopped talking for 2 months after Rebecca Martinez worked for us. We never understood why until today. How many more families are out there? Rebecca was fully crying now, mascara streaming down her cheeks. You don't understand the pressure of this job. These families expect miracles. They want their children to be perfect angels while they're gone all day, and when that doesn't happen, we're the ones who get blamed. So you decided to traumatize babies instead of finding a different career? I shot back. You made a conscious choice to hurt children who couldn't defend themselves. Through my front window, I could see police cars pulling into my driveway. The police officers who entered my living room weren't what I'd expected. Detective Martinez turned out to be a woman in her 40s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, accompanied by a younger male officer who immediately began documenting everything with a body camera. Mrs. Chen, I need you to walk me through your evidence chronologically, Detective Martinez said, settling into my kitchen while the other officer stayed with Rebecca in the living room. Start from when you first discovered the abuse. I opened my laptop and began pulling up the video files, my hand steadier now that professional help had arrived. But as I started explaining the timeline, my phone rang with yet another unknown number. I'm sorry, but I should take this, I told the detective. More families have been reaching out. Sarah? This is Monica Rodriguez. I got your number from Jennifer Walsh. Rebecca Martinez worked for my family for 2 months last spring. The woman's voice was shaky. After she left, my son Diego started having night terrors so severe we had to sleep in his room for 6 weeks. He kept saying bad lady comes back over and over. Detective Martinez leaned forward. Mrs. Chen, put her on speaker please. Ms. Rodriguez, this is Detective Martinez with Portland Police. How old was your son when Ms. Martinez was caring for him? 15 months. He'd been such a happy toddler before she started working for us, but everything changed. He became aggressive, started hitting other children at daycare, wouldn't let me leave him anywhere. Monica's voice cracked. The pediatrician said it was probably a developmental phase, but it happened so suddenly. I glanced toward the living room where Rebecca sat hunched over, the officer standing nearby. She could hear every word, and her shoulders seemed to shrink further with each new revelation. How many families have contacted you today, Mrs. Chen? Detective Martinez asked. I scrolled through my messages. 8 confirmed families where Rebecca worked. But Jennifer Walsh is coordinating with other parents from the Facebook group, and they've identified at least 12 more nannies who were sharing these techniques. The detective's jaw tightened. This is bigger than we initially thought. My laptop chimed with a new email, this one from Care.com security team. The subject line read, urgent, account verification for Rebecca Martinez. Detective, you need to see this, I said, opening the email. Care.com is asking me to verify Rebecca's employment because they've received multiple reports about her profile today. But look at this, they're saying she has active profiles on their platform under 3 different names. Detective Martinez leaned over to read the screen. Rebecca Martinez, Rebecca Valdez, and Becca Martinez. Same photo, slightly different work histories. She called out to the other officer. Johnson, we need to run all 3 names through the database. From the living room, Rebecca's voice rose in panic, those aren't fake names. Martinez is my maiden name, Valdez is my stepfather's name, and Becca is just a nickname. I wasn't trying to hide anything. Then why use different names on different platforms? Detective Martinez called back. The silence that followed was answer enough. My phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Patterson. Carla just confessed that Rebecca taught her to use different names on job sites so families couldn't cross-reference their work histories. She said there are at least 20 nannies in the network doing this. 20 nannies. Across how many families? How many children had been subjected to systematic psychological abuse while their parents worked, trusting that their most precious possessions were safe? Detective, I said quietly, I think we're looking at something much bigger than a few bad nannies. This sounds like organized fraud. Detective Martinez nodded grimly. Mrs. Chen, we're going to need you to come to the station tonight. And bring everything, all the videos, all the communications, all the contact information for every family that's reached out. This just became a multi-jurisdictional investigation. The investigation moved faster than I could have imagined. By Thursday evening, I was sitting in a conference room at the Portland Police Bureau with Detective Martinez, 2 FBI agents, and a prosecutor from the district attorney's office. The scope of what we'd uncovered was staggering. We've identified 43 active members in the Portland Childcare Reality Check Facebook group, Agent Sarah Kim explained, spreading printed screenshots across the table. But that's just one group. We found 6 similar networks operating across Oregon and Washington, with overlapping membership. The screenshots made my stomach turn. Posts with titles like breaking a stubborn 18-month-old and making clingy babies more independent. Comments sharing techniques that were nothing short of psychological torture, all disguised in childcare terminology. This post from October 15th, Agent Kim continued, pointing to a screenshot, shows Rebecca Martinez asking for advice about a particularly challenging 8-month-old who cries excessively. The responses are disturbing. I leaned forward to read, recognizing the timeline. October 15th was 3 weeks after Rebecca started caring for Emma. She'd been crowdsourcing abuse tactics for my daughter from day one. Carla Nanny 22 suggests isolation therapy until the baby learns crying doesn't get results. I read aloud, my voice barely steady. Becca Nanny _PDX, that's Rebecca, responds how long do you leave him? Parent works from home sometimes. Carla Nanny 22 is Carla Montenegro, Detective Martinez confirmed. And her response was long enough to break the pattern. Just turn up music if the parent might hear. The prosecutor, a stern woman named Janet Collins, made notes on her legal pad. This establishes premeditation and conspiracy. They weren't just individually abusing children, they were coordinating systematic psychological trauma. My phone buzzed with another call from an unknown number. Since Monday, I'd received 63 calls from families who'd either employed Rebecca or other nannies from the network. Each story was heartbreakingly similar: behavioral changes in children, unexplained regression, night terrors, separation anxiety. That's probably another family, I told the group. Should I take it? Agent Kim nodded. We need to document every case. Hello? Is this Sarah Chen? My name is Patricia Williams. I saw your number in a Facebook group for affected families. Rebecca Martinez worked for us for 6 weeks in September. The woman's voice was thick with emotion. My daughter Sophia is only 10 months old, but she started flinching when strangers approach her. She never did that before. My heart broke for the stranger and her baby. Patricia, I'm actually at the police station right now with investigators. They need to hear your story. Can I put you on speaker? As Patricia described Sophia's behavioral changes, the sudden fear of being left alone, the regression in sleep patterns, the way she'd started crying differently, I watched the federal agents exchange glances. This wasn't just about Rebecca anymore. This was about a criminal network that had systematically targeted the most vulnerable victims possible, babies and toddlers who couldn't report what was happening to them. Mrs. Williams, Agent Kim interrupted. Did Ms. Martinez ever mention connecting with other nannies online? Did she reference getting advice from social media groups? Actually, yes. She said she was part of a professional network that shared best practices for challenging behaviors. She made it sound so legitimate, like continuing education. The room went quiet. Professional network. Best practices. They'd weaponized the language of legitimate childcare to mask organized abuse. We're going to need you to come in for a formal statement, Detective Martinez said. And Mrs. Williams? Your daughter will need to be evaluated by a child psychologist who specializes in trauma. The state will cover the cost. After Patricia hung up, Prosecutor Collins looked at me with something approaching awe. Mrs. Chen, do you realize what you've uncovered here? This could be the largest organized childcare fraud case in Oregon history. But all I could think about was Emma, sleeping peacefully at my sister's house while I helped build a case that might prevent this from happening to other children. My daughter was safe now, but how many others were still trapped with nannies from this network? How quickly can we shut down the remaining members? I asked. Agent Kim smiled grimly. Faster than they can coordinate their defense. The raids happened at 6 a.m. on Friday morning, coordinated across 17 addresses simultaneously. I wasn't allowed to participate directly, but Detective Martinez called me from the command center with real-time updates. We just executed the warrant at Rebecca's apartment, she said, her voice tight with controlled excitement. Sarah, you need to prepare yourself for what we found. I was pacing my living room, Emma sleeping peacefully in her crib, the first time she'd slept through the night in weeks. What kind of evidence? Detailed files on every family she's worked for over the past 3 years. Not just basic employment records, psychological profiles. Notes about parental guilt levels, work schedules, financial stress indicators. She's been systematically identifying vulnerable targets. My blood ran cold. She profiled us? Your file is 47 pages long, Sarah. She documented everything from your postpartum anxiety to David's work travel schedule. There are notes about your excessive maternal guilt and how to leverage emotional triggers to maintain employment despite red flags. I sank into my couch, the same couch where Rebecca had sat just 2 days ago, crying and making excuses. She'd been studying me like a predator studies prey, identifying my weaknesses to better manipulate both me and my daughter. But here's the worst part, Detective Martinez continued. We found a spreadsheet titled Success Metrics that tracks behavioral changes in the children she's cared for. Decreased crying complaints, increased parental satisfaction ratings, reduced interference from families. Success metrics for child abuse, I whispered, feeling sick. She was treating psychological trauma like a performance indicator. The more damaged the children became, the higher she scored herself on behavior modification. My phone beeped with an incoming call from Agent Kim. Detective, I need to take this other line. Sarah, we just arrested Carla Montenegro at the Patterson house, Agent Kim said without preamble. She was still working there. Mrs. Patterson came home early to check on Tyler and found Carla forcing him to sit in a closet as punishment for asking for water. The image hit me like a physical blow. 3-year-old Tyler, locked in darkness because he was thirsty. Is he okay? Shaken but physically unharmed. But Sarah, Carla had Rebecca's files with her. She's been using Rebecca's psychological profiles to target the Patterson family more effectively. This wasn't just abuse, it was systematic, methodical torture of children, refined through collaboration and data sharing. They'd turned childcare into a science experiment where babies were lab rats. How many more are still out there? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. We've made 14 arrests so far. But we found evidence that the network extends into Washington, California, and Nevada. This could affect hundreds of families. The scope was overwhelming. While I'd been focused on protecting Emma and destroying Rebecca, we'd stumbled onto something much larger, a criminal enterprise that had been operating in plain sight for years. My doorbell rang. Through the window, I could see Jennifer Walsh and Lisa Morrison standing on my porch, both looking exhausted but determined. Agent Kim, I need to go. 2 of the affected mothers are here. Keep documenting everything, Sarah. We're going to need all the victim impact statements we can get. I opened the door to find Jennifer holding a thick folder. We've been calling families all night, she said. 23 confirmed cases of children who showed behavioral changes under Rebecca's care. But Sarah, we found something else. Lisa stepped forward, her face grim. Rebecca wasn't the leader of this network. She was middle management. We found the real architect. My stomach dropped. Who? Jennifer opened her folder, revealing a printed Facebook profile. The woman in the photo looked like any other childcare professional, professional headshot, warm smile, credentials listed prominently. Dr. Amanda Chen, no relation to you. She runs a child development consulting firm in Seattle. She's been training nannies in what she calls advanced behavioral management for high-need children for the past 5 years. I stared at the photo of a woman who shared my last name but clearly not my values. She's legitimizing child abuse with fake credentials? Not fake, Lisa said quietly. Real PhD in child psychology. Real licensed practice. She's been using actual developmental science to teach nannies how to psychologically break children more efficiently. The revelation was devastating. This wasn't just criminal, it was a fundamental betrayal of everything child development science was supposed to protect. Dr. Amanda Chen's credentials were impeccable, which somehow made everything worse. As Jennifer spread out printed pages from the woman's website across my coffee table, I felt sick reading about her innovative approaches to early childhood behavioral modification and her breakthrough research in infant emotional regulation. She's been running weekend workshops for nannies and babysitters, Lisa explained, pointing to a seminar schedule. Look at these titles, Establishing Dominance with Preverbal Children and Breaking Attachment Dependencies in Infants. She's charging $400 per person for these sessions. My phone rang, Detective Martinez again. Sarah, we need you back at the station immediately. The FBI found something in Rebecca's apartment that changes everything. What kind of something? Video recordings. Rebecca wasn't just following Dr. Chen's techniques, she was documenting them. We have hours of footage showing systematic abuse methods being tested on multiple children, including Emma. My knees went weak. She was filming Emma? Hidden cameras in her purse, her phone, even a pen camera. Sarah, she's been creating training materials. The abuse of your daughter was being used to teach other nannies how to break children more effectively. Jennifer grabbed my arm as I swayed. We're coming with you, she said firmly. Lisa and I have been coordinating with 12 other families. We're not letting you face this alone. At the police station, Agent Kim led us to a secure viewing room where a federal prosecutor named Michael Torres was waiting with a laptop open. Mrs. Chen, I need to warn you that what we're about to show you is extremely disturbing. These videos were found encrypted on Rebecca's personal devices. The first clip was dated October 3rd, Rebecca's second week caring for Emma. The camera angle showed my daughter in her high chair, and I could hear Rebecca's voice off screen. Subject responds to isolation technique within 12 minutes. Crying decreased by 60% when placed in darkened room alone. Subject. She called my baby a subject. She was treating Emma like a lab experiment, I whispered, watching my daughter's confused face on the screen. Even at 8 months old, Emma's expression showed bewilderment that someone could ignore her distress so completely. The prosecutor scrolled to another file. This one is from November 8th. Rebecca is narrating her techniques while implementing them. On screen, Rebecca's face appeared as she positioned the camera. Day 43 with Chin infant. Testing Dr. Chen's emotional conditioning protocol today. Subject has been crying for 8 minutes. Implementing phase 2 isolation with verbal discouragement. I watched in horror as Rebecca walked to Emma's crib and leaned down. Mommy can't hear you crying from work, she said in a sing-song voice that chilled me to the bone. If you cry too much, maybe she won't want to come home to you anymore. Emma's crying intensified, and Rebecca smiled, actually smiled, at the camera. Response confirms Dr. Chen's theory about infant fear conditioning. Subject shows increased distress when abandonment themes are introduced. Jennifer was crying beside me. Lisa had gone pale. But I felt something beyond grief or anger. I felt a cold, calculating fury that reminded me exactly why I'd started documenting Rebecca's abuse in the first place. How many videos are there? I asked. 47 featuring Emma alone, Agent Kim replied. Over 200 total across 19 different children. Rebecca has been Dr. Chen's primary data collector for the past 18 months. Torres leaned forward. Mrs. Chen, these recordings show that your daughter was specifically chosen as a test case for Dr. Chen's most extreme techniques. Rebecca's notes indicate that Dr. Chen wanted data on high-stress household implementation, families dealing with separation, financial pressure, and maternal anxiety. They hadn't just targeted Emma randomly. They'd selected her specifically because my marriage was falling apart and I was vulnerable. My daughter had been tortured to advance some sick research project. Where is Dr. Chen now? I asked, my voice deadly quiet. FBI Seattle is coordinating with Washington state authorities. But Sarah, she's been training nannies across the entire West Coast. This network could involve thousands of families. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown Seattle number. Dr. Chen's last workshop was yesterday. 26 nannies attended. We need to find these families before more children get hurt. I looked up at the federal agents, the prosecutors, and the other mothers who become my unlikely allies in this nightmare. How do we stop this from spreading? Agent Kim smiled grimly. We're about to find out exactly how big this conspiracy really is. The final confrontation came 6 weeks later in a federal courthouse in Portland. Dr. Amanda Chen sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, her professional facade completely shattered. Beside her, Rebecca looked like a ghost of the woman who'd once charmed me during that interview. I took the witness stand holding a folder containing pictures of Emma from before and after Rebecca's employment. The difference was stark. My bright, curious baby had become withdrawn and anxious under systematic abuse disguised as childcare. Mrs. Chen, Prosecutor Torres said, can you tell the court what impact this conspiracy has had on your daughter? I opened the folder, my hand steady now after weeks of preparation. Emma required 4 months of specialized therapy to recover from trauma-induced developmental delays. Dr. Kim documented regression in her social responses, disrupted attachment patterns, and hypervigilance typically seen in much older abuse victims. Dr. Chen's lawyer objected, but Judge Harrison overruled him. The evidence was overwhelming: 47 videos of Emma being systematically tortured, psychological profiles designed to exploit my vulnerabilities, and training materials distributed to hundreds of nannies across 4 states. The defendant turned my 8-month-old daughter into a research subject, I continued, looking directly at Dr. Chen. She coached Rebecca Martinez to implement emotional conditioning protocols that caused measurable psychological damage to an infant who couldn't defend herself or report what was happening. Rebecca's sentencing had been finalized the week before, 18 months in federal prison plus lifetime prohibition from childcare work. Carla Montenegro received 12 months. But Dr. Chen faced conspiracy charges that could put her away for decades. Mrs. Chen, the defense attorney said during cross-examination, isn't it true that you installed hidden cameras and recorded private conversations without consent? I installed nanny cameras in my own home to protect my child from someone I was paying to provide care, I replied firmly. Every recording was made in my house, documenting abuse of my own daughter. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. When they returned with guilty verdicts on all counts, conspiracy to commit child abuse, wire fraud, and violation of federal child care safety statutes, I felt a satisfaction deeper than revenge. Dr. Chen was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison and ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution to affected families. Her advanced behavioral management program was permanently shut down, and federal investigators identified 847 families across 7 states who'd employed nannies trained in her techniques. More importantly, the case led to comprehensive reform of childcare background check requirements and mandatory reporting protocols for suspected emotional abuse of preverbal children. 6 months later, I was featured on 60 Minutes discussing the investigation that started with one hidden camera and exposed a network affecting nearly 1,000 families. Emma sat on my lap during the interview, babbling happily, a healthy, secure 15-month-old with no memory of the monster who'd once called her unwanted. What would you say to other parents who suspect something but can't prove it? The interviewer asked. I looked down at Emma, who was reaching for the microphone with curious fingers. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And remember that protecting your child is worth any discomfort you might feel about surveillance or confrontation. The final statistic still haunts me. 127 children showed measurable improvement in behavior and development after their nannies were arrested. Rebecca Martinez will never work with children again, and neither will any member of her network. Emma calls me Mama now, clear and confident. She laughs when strangers make funny faces at her. She's never known that someone once wished she was never born, and if I have anything to say about it, she never will. Sometimes the best revenge is simply ensuring it never happens again.